Welcome everyone to another deck spotlight with TheChiv's. I am TheChiv's. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Naxx Ramp Druid. But before we get into this, today we lost a great mind for humanity, Robin Williams. Great comedian, brilliant thinker, and has inspired a lot of people no matter what race, religion, creed, whatever. He made people laugh. And he was a great inspiration to me and a lot of my friends. And, well, you will be missed. To your daughter and children and wives, ex-wives, you have our sympathies. Alright, moving along. Alright, so, Naxx Ramp Druid. Okay, so we've seen a lot of changes with Naxx Ramp coming out. We saw a lot of inclusions of cards and slight changes. Haunted Creepers now showing up in like token druids. We've seen a great amount of variance in a lot of other decks. Even like Paladin aggros are getting in on the mix. Backspace Rogue is modifying. So it's really nice to see an old playstyle of Druid, the Ramp defensive Druid, also taking advantage of this. So let's break this down. Alright, so obviously in any kind of ramp you're going to want Innervate Wild Growth, because without it you're really going to have a hard time getting to any of your power, which if you haven't noticed, this deck's power starts at 4, and a great amount of the deck is 4 or higher. Actually over half of it is, so you're going to want a ramp. Ramp is essential. Okay, so Mark of the Wild. Here, this is kind of an iffy card, in my personal opinion. I might have gone a different way, but I actually found in use that it works really good, especially with Harvest Golem. Alright, I was turn 2 Harvest Golem, and then turn 3 comes around, and I would throw this on it, and have a nice little 4 or 5 taunt. So, yeah, that worked great. In other circumstances, I used this to beef up another taunt, just to make sure he couldn't tempo trade through it. Or used it as just a little bit more to finish something off, or finish my opponent off. And that was great. Okay, Wild Growth, again, see Innervate, core of every ramp. Wrath, duality card, you use it to finish off a minion, draw a card, use it to kill a minion that has more than like 2 life, great. It's a very functional card that I think will never go out of a Ramp Druid. Alright, Big Game Hunter, because Giants, Ragnaros, and other big-ass shit exists. Harvest Golem, this is a staple of a lot of decks. It's no different here. This is a really important card to get in your early game if you don't get your Ramp. Because this deck doesn't have any other plays you can make. So you're really going to want that Harvest Golem to give you somewhat of a buffer. Alright, Swipe. Great against aggro. You can take this to your opponent's face, which I love about it. And with other cards, it can be really, really good. None of those cards are in this deck, so you're going to have to use it at face value normally for removing their options and allowing your taunters to go unmolested. The whole point of this deck is nothing but taunts. You know, you want to slow down their aggro. You want to totally demolish them. Okay, so Chill Wind Yeti, pretty staple. We only are running one here. We actually sacked one Chill Wind Yeti for another card we will get to here in a minute. It's a solid card. It's very difficult for a lot of people to deal with, and it's been known to draw out hexes and polymorphs, so that makes it really good. Keeper of the Grove, because we like silence. Seriously. Nerubian Eggs, silence. Enough said. Actually, no, that's not enough said. With Reincarnate now, and things like Ancestral Spirit, silence is really huge. Last thing you want to do is let something be on the board that has Ancestral Spirit on it, especially if they're playing with Baron Rivendares. Yes, we're talking Shaman plays here. So yeah, silence is really, really good. You're really going to want to get a lot of this, and we're packing 2 just with Keeper of the Grove right there. Alright, so Senjin, here's your first real taunter. It's been solid in a lot of early metas. Here we have it also making an impact. It's really good. It slows down your opponent's aggro, and that's a good thing. Spellbreaker. This guy used to be in so many decks back in the day, and it's good to see him come back. This puts our silence count to 3, which means we can handle 2 Nerubians. It means we can handle a couple other things that we don't want to deal with. It gives us options. Druid of the Claw. Now, normally I would say this is a duality card. No, it is not. It is a 4/6 taunt. That's the only time you're going to want to use it, is as a 4/6 taunt. Simply due to the fact that you're forcing your opponents to trade into it. Going a 4/4 to take out an Azure Drake might seem like a good idea, but it really isn't. Okay, Loatheb. Because Force of Nature combo and Miracle Rogues can eat a fat one. Seriously. Okay, Sludge Belcher. Here's the second of the Naxx additions to this deck. Sludge Belcher actually fits very nicely into this deck. For the simple reason of it's basically a Sen'jin that when you kill it, you get a Goldshire Footman. Really, that's all it is. Yeah, it's Death Rattle, which means as of Tuesday you can get a little bit more benefit. Well, actually, technically Wednesday you can get a little bit more benefit off of it with Undertaker. But in this instance, you're really not going to get any additional benefit. One thing you can do, however, is they're most likely going to be able to take out the 3/5. Doing 5 damage used to be something that a lot of people was like, oh, well, that's your test. No, that's easy these days. So then you get left with the 1/2. 1/2 is not really going to stop Jack in the mana curve when this guy is coming out. But you could always Mark of the Wild it and then turn it into a 3/4. That's a decent taunt to kind of slow them down. Alright. Sunwalker. Why? Because we love taunts. And Sunwalker is the epitome of taunt. Solid 4/5 base, plus taunt, plus divine shield. This guy just makes people's life a living hell. And it's also a great way of drawing out the Black Knight. So we got Black Knight in here because, well, we don't want our opponents to have taunts either. We want to be the only ones with taunts. Deal with it. Okay, Ancient of Lore. Now, in theory, you're going to want to use this to draw cards. However, in practice, if you're not hitting your ramp stride, this guy automatically goes into Healbot mode. I wish I was joking on this. The reason for this is you have no low game. So you got to get your Innervates, you got to get your Wild Growth, or at least get a Harvest Golem and try to eke your way through it. But you're going to want to use this guy mostly for life gain. Yeah, the 2 draw is really helpful. I'm not even going to lie. But it comes a point where what's more important? Possibly pulling something or ensuring that you're going to be able to play the next round. So, yeah, Ancient of Lore, Healbot. Okay, Ancient of War. Okay, the overall theme of this deck is, hey, look, I'm going to put up these walls, and you're going to have fun getting through them. You're going to exhaust your opponents. If you could draw out, like, the Black Knight using the Sunwalker, and then the next turn you play an Ancient of War, he's going to be kicking himself. He's going to now have to trade that Ancient of War, plus do something else to take out the Ancient of War. So the Black Knight ends up being almost a sucker play. You know, you play the Ancient of War out after the Black Knight, and your opponent is just going to be a rage-filled salt magnet. Alright, now finishing this off, we've got Ragnaros the Firelord. Why? Because in a deck that's nothing but a taunt wall, having the King of Swing makes a lot of sense. And here's why. Most likely, you're going to force your opponents to tempo trade with you unfavorably. This means they're going to be spending more cards out of their hand, which means they won't have answers, which means you can easily pull out some interesting stuff from them. They might have the big game hunter, but they're going to get to a point where they feel that they need a board presence, and they'll actually play it out. I've had this happen like 6 games in a row, and I was actually shocked that people were willing to do that. And of course, I immediately played Ragnaros the next turn just to punish them for their stupidity. So, Ragnaros, King of Swing, provides so much value in this deck. because you could literally just outlast your opponents with it. This is almost like the equivalent of the priest concept of fatiguing your opponent. Well, you can kind of do the same thing here as a druid, and it's really, really fun. I've done it to paladins, like with the Colento build. I've done that to them left and right. By the way, they hate it. I've done it to priest. By the way, it's ironically funny, and then they add you and add some really nasty messages. Now, we're going to talk about a couple decks where this does really good and a couple decks where it does really bad. Okay, Mage. Aggro Mage. This takes a dump all over it, for the most part. The only downside is if they hit their spell curve with, you know, the Frostbolts and Ice Lances and all that. At that point, they're just going to focus on burning you down with spells and say, screw your taunts, we don't care. They'll put down ice blocks, they'll put down ice barriers and things of that nature, just to ensure that they're going to have the last laugh. This is a little bit difficult to deal with, due to the fact that, well, Flare is a hunter-only card, but you can make it through this. Remember, Ancient of Lore, Healbot. Alright? Always keep your life up against the Mage. Alright. Zoo. Yes. Zoo. Zoo is a very interesting matchup as well. One, Zoo can easily overwhelm this deck like it's going out of style. So normally I would say that's a bad thing, but I've also seen this thing go toe-to-toe with Zoo and just exhaust it out. It all depends on if you hit your ramp. If you hit your ramp right off the rip, you have a really good chance of beating Zoo. If you don't hit it, you're going to lose. Not even gonna lie, you will lose. Okay, Hunter. Hunter's another very difficult matchup. Why? Hunter's Mark turns your taunts into jelly. Unleash the Hounds. Again, jelly. So Hunters can do a lot of really amazing things that can totally screw you up. So you got to be very, very careful against them, but you can eke out the win very decently. I would probably put your win rate against Hunter at about 55%, and your win rate with Zoo at about the same rate. Even though they're two totally different types of decks, you're going to function about 55% against them. Alright, now the one that we've been seeing popping up, especially with some of the tournaments that have been happening the past couple days, Miracle. Will this handle Miracle? Yes, it can handle Miracle. Now, normally when you're saying, yes, this can handle Miracle, it's going to handle it in one of two ways. Either A, it shuts down the Gadgetzan Auctioneer, or B, it denies it any possible value. This is more denied possible value. You have the ability of putting up a taunt wall. Okay, even with their two saps, if you haven't counted, there's a buttload of taunts in here. I think at the count was 9 possible. So, 9 possible taunts. I'm sorry, that leaves 7. Not to mention you could play those other ones back. So he's going to be forced to use spells and his weapon to kind of relegate and mitigate your taunt's effect. So what ends up happening is that he has nothing left when it comes time to try to pull into something or hope to get the Leroy Burst combo. Now, this doesn't mean that it's always going to work. God draws happen. Miracle can beat this deck, but they got to get through your taunts first, and that's the really crucial thing here. If they can't get through your taunts, they're completely screwed. Alright, so Control Warrior. This actually does very well against Control Warrior. The budget version and the more expensive version. I was actually kind of shocked by that. And the reason why it did very well is it completely throws everything he could possibly do to do damage to you and slows it down. He really can't get an advantage, and for the most part. You'll actually get to points where you're gaining armor because of your hero power, and you're taking away all of his armor. But again, remember, great opening hands really can dictate that battle, so be wary. Now let's get to the one that a lot of people have been playing a lot of lately, is Shaman. Alright, Shaman. This deck was designed because of Shaman, I get the feeling, with the 3 silences. Alright, Spellbreaker is going to be really huge in this. Keeper of the Grove is going to be extremely huge in this. When you're playing against the Shaman, you're probably never going to want to use this to deal 2 damage, because I guarantee they're going to pop something down that you're going to wish you would use that silence on instead. So keep that in mind. You're going to be able to lock down any aggression they could do. They'll have to trade extremely unfavorably, but they do have AoEs. However, you can kind of predict when an AoE is coming, because it's going to be at that time where it's going to be the worst possible outcome for you. This is where low adept really helps. Alright? This will allow you to get that last little BAM on them, and then the next turn, yeah, sure, they could use it, but they've already lost so much that there's really no coming back. Alright. So, all in all, I think this deck is relatively okay. I like a lot of the aspects of it. I think it could have been better to some degree. I do not believe that the claim of easy legend with this is all 100% valid. You ask any player who made legend, and it's like, did you play the whole deck from start to finish? They'll tell you no. Okay? You can't just say one deck is easy to get to legend with. And the reason for that is, depending on where you're at in the ladder, there's different playstyles that are more, what's the word I'm looking for? Abundant, rampant. For instance, early games you might see a lot of aggro decks. Mid game on the ladder you're looking at more, let's say, mid-range and control decks. But then when you get to the top of the ladder, it's actually like a little of each. So do I think that this could handle in, say, the top of the ladder? Yeah. I think this would do very good at top of ladder. Do I say this would do good in middle ladder, 5 to 10? Sure. I could see this doing okay. But in early ladders, this is not going to be very well for you, because you're just going to get overwhelmed with massive amounts of aggro. And if you don't hit your ramp, you're screwed. So I think the person who was playing this already had a slight advantage of making legendary the time before, so he really didn't have to grind all that much to get up through there. So a lot of the comments I've been seeing on this deck of, oh, this doesn't work, oh, this, no, you have to look at it from perspective base, alright? When he was probably playing this, he probably started out at like rank 10 versus having to start out at rank 20. So, yeah, for him, it was easy legend, because all the decks he was going to be facing were going to be within that archetype he was expecting. Not to mention the fact that with all the new Naxx cards coming out, the entire meta has literally flipped on its head. So a solid deck design can easily slice through a lot of that chaos. So, but in unranked, I was having a great amount of success with this. In later testing in ranked play, I was averaging about 58% with this. Initially, it dropped several matches right off the rip, and I couldn't figure out why. And I just kept playing it out, and it ended up winning enough matches to where I gained again, and actually started to show a little bit more consistency. So after doing some calculating, it came out to 58% win rate. So I'm happy with that. And anything that's over 50% is generally good. The higher, yeah, much better, because you'll be able to grind faster with it. But results are going to vary no matter what you look at. Now, another thing I want to point out is saying that anything is easy this or legend that. These are little things that people put in their deck titles in order to draw attention. Does it mean the deck is bad? No. Does it mean that their claims are wrong? No. But they do this in order to get your attention, to get more views, to get more upvotes. It's kind of like ego stroking people. Alright, so the deck is not bad. I think people should really give this a chance once they hit about, let's say, rank 12 and up. And I think that they'll see a much different performance. Now, we've got the new wing of Naxx coming out soon. And this is basically going to lead to a couple things. Mages Gone Wild. Zoo Gone Wild. Combo Burst Priest. Yeah, I never thought I would say those words in one sentence. And Warrior Control getting stronger. So, will this be able to handle up against those? We shall see. Anyway, this is the Shiv saying if you like this, please like, subscribe, tell your friends. Um, we also would like to point out that this week there's another $20 NA Battle.net funds gift card being given away by the people over at MassEnchant for their Friday night dust-off tournament. So go ahead, check them out, sign up. It's really fun. Last tournament took 3 hours to play for 60 some odd people. Speed Swiss is definitely a lot more fun for a lot of people. Alright, but again, thank you very much. Bye-bye.